All right, everybody. Hi there. This is Lisa Rehurick, founder and CEO of the RFP Success Company and author of Dare to Be Influential, which officially hit #1 in new releases over the weekend. So excited, so humbled that you all helped to support. So super excited. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. We are here talking to a very good friend of mine, Heather Bailey, and this is going to be a great conversation. We're going to talk about influence, and we're going to kind of just have a conversation about what that means to each one of us. And we're going to talk a little bit about the book. And Heather is a super rock star sales leader. And I'm going to have her tell you a little bit more about who she is. So Heather, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. And I'm so honored you asked me to be your partner in crime to give you all the shout outs about this amazing book. I love it. And it's so relevant to today. So it's so exciting to talk about. So Heather Bailey, I am a hotel sales girl. So it's funny when you get into reading Lisa's book, you'll find out that she wanted to get into this industry. And then she said, So I'm here to represent, but I work for BWH Hotel Group, which is a portfolio of brands, including Best Western Hotels and Resorts, Sure Stay Hotel Group, and most recently World Hotels that we merged with last year, 2 years ago. So moving on up. So I work in the corporate side, and my team is responsible for strategizing with all of our hotels in North America. And then I partner with all of our international hotels to provide them sales training. And we take everything from how to be a great salesperson and how to find new business and provide and develop and facilitate sales training for them. So super fun.
Super fun. And she's not giving herself enough credit, but she's a super big rock star. She's a very big influencer in her organization and in the industry in general. And so when I was writing the book and I needed to find people that would read it and then give me a testimonial that we could print on the back of the book, Heather came to mind, and I was like, hey, would you be willing to do this? And she jumped in, which was fantastic. And kind of the first thing that I want to talk about, Heather, was when I sent that to you and you saw kind of the title and you saw the word influence, like, what did you think? Because what does influence really mean for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's interesting as a leader, you don't really fall into or you don't start out in a leadership role. I feel like when I started reading your book and looking back on my past, you grow into where you are, right? And so there's all these people that influence your career to get you to where you are today, whether that's bosses and peers and direct reports of your own. But when I thought, okay, influential leader, what does that really mean? And I thought, well, influence is really about how do you impact somebody's life, right? So what are you doing as a human, as a leader? How do you impact anybody's life on a day-to-day, but also in their career development? So as I dove into your book, I found it really interesting to start untapping some of these secrets of success and whatnot. So to relate to all of that. But yeah, I think influence is, obviously there's both positive and negative, and you really want to focus on the positives, but you learn from both. And bringing that into your leadership style.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, the whole positive versus negative, because I think that we don't think about that, right? I don't think we think about the fact that, especially the little day-to-day things, we don't really think about the fact that how I treat you or the smile that I give you or the scowl that I give you could influence your day. And I think that the more we are in leadership roles, that's our responsibility to show the positive side of that. And that's kind of hard to do on a regular basis, right? To kind of always show up as a rah-rah cheerleader. You don't want to be like disingenuous, but you also want to be positive.
Yeah, it's definitely staying authentic to your true self, right? Which is exactly what you talk about in your book, is how do you be an influential leader while staying to your true self? And I think that's a lot of identifying like what your values are, right?
Yep.
So a lot of times if I look back, oh my gosh, like I think back to when I first started as a director of sales, I was 26, which was pretty young to start in a leadership role, but I had a really small team in a small hotel, but that's where you start. And I thought getting into that role, I didn't really know anything about influencing people's days or whatnot. It was about being a salesperson, and I was good at it. So then they said, next step, director of sales, and then you start your path. But I think to your point of impacting, you could have employees all across the country. You could be going into an office pre-COVID, of course. Um, what life was like pre-2020 when you actually had people to talk to in an office. But it is being positive in that influence in that sense. And it's funny, actually, how you were saying you could impact somebody's day in one example or another. But funny story, totally not work related, but I have to tell it because I thought it was just adorable. So I was making tiramisu for Julian's birthday, and I didn't think to get espresso through like a Starbucks, just the cans. I literally went to Starbucks and was like, I need espresso. And I had no idea how to order an espresso. I'm like, I don't order espresso. I got this much and I needed this much. So I had to go back a second time, and the guy remembered me. So I'm going through the drive-through again. I'm like, I'm making a tiramisu and I need espresso and I have no idea how to order espresso. So totally just throwing it out there, like, please help. And I get the espresso. So he's like, no, I remember you from coming in just a little while ago. So they literally brought me a cup of espresso, and they were adorable. So this girl brings me the cup. She goes, it is literally filled to the cup. I think it's everything you need. I'm like, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And they were like, that tiramisu is going to be amazing. Have fun. And I'm like, oh, you're so cute. Like, it was just such a positive impact. You know,
they were all in. They were like invested with you.
Totally. And I told Julian, I was like, the people at Starbucks are all gung-ho for this tiramisu. And thank God it came out amazing. But still, it's just those little things, even not even being a leader, but you realize it, because I feel that a lot of responsibility as leaders is to influence. So when somebody else can influence, you learn from that too. And it just makes that like, oh, warm and fuzzy kind of feel.
Totally. And actually, I've not even really I didn't address this in the book, but it's a great point that customer service, client interaction, that's all very much impacted by how you influence people. In hotels, that front desk person or the bellman or the valet, the very first person that they've got contact with, will have an influence on that person's stay, for better or for worse. And we've all experienced the jackass front desk clerk who's rude and it kind of ruins your stay, or the over the top person that really helps you just with direction somewhere, and how amazing that is for the rest of your stay. So it really can be very impactful.
It is so true. Yeah. And that's a big thing that we teach from our side, because we believe in sales culture. You know, if you have an established sales culture, that starts at the top. And in our leadership class, we really get into that whole concept of, you don't have to be the salesperson as a leader. You just need to create the culture of a sales environment, and that everybody impacts that guest experience. And if everybody's impacting that guest experience, guess what? You're in sales, because you're persuading in some ways, which is influencing. Absolutely. So that's a big deal when people kind of go, oh, I can create a culture like that and actually have my employees be a part of that. And you know, I mean, when you walk into a store or hotel or whatnot, you feel it. You know the difference of if there's good leadership there or not. You can tell by the minute you walk in the door.
Yep. Even the minute that you talk to somebody on the phone.
Totally. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Plenty of people lately in customer service where I'm like, I'll kill you with kindness back, because what side did you wake up on today?
Yes, exactly.
Good Lord.
Oh my gosh. So I totally was remiss at the begining of this call. First of all, I know we're here celebrating the book. And because of that, we are here cheering to, how do I do this? Okay, clink.
I hear you. Yeah. Oh, clink. Oh, wait, this way. Yeah. Clink.
No, that way. Whoops. It was really funny because I almost forgot to do my martini. For those of you who don't know me, I love martinis. And so I collect martini glasses, and this is one of my newest ones. And I almost forgot to get my martini ready. And so here it is, vodka martini with a little bit of lemon, and it's so delicious.
And I told Lisa that I wish I could drink martinis, but she allowed me for my red wine. So we have our staple drinks.
Well, you know, I say we've got to be true to ourselves, right? That's one of the chapters in the book is be you. And so you're being you. It's perfect.
Yeah. Goes with the theme.
Okay. So one of the things you said a little while ago was kind of that you were talking about positive and negative influences. Tell us a little bit about some positive influences that have been in your life.
Okay. So I think a positive influence is really about people, right? So, I mean, we can have experiences that are going to be a positive influence, but I always have learned through my career, but then also as we're teaching and working with hotels, is we all have those people in our life that are going to impact in a positive and a negative, as we mentioned, but you pick little bits of it. Like, what do you want to be? What do you don't want to be?
Yeah.
And I've been really fortunate with some really fantastic people that have truly helped shape me as a salesperson, but then also as a leader. So, gosh, when I came out here, so I literally moved out here after college. I didn't have a job, I didn't have a car. I had my stepdad's brother's vacation condo to move in.
Wow.
And I just said, I want to move to Arizona and figure it out and see what I can find for some experience, and then end up back in Boston, which 21 years later, I'm still here in Phoenix. But
Love it.
obviously things work that way. But I definitely think I have said to my current boss, where I'm like, I'm just really fortunate for the people that I've met. But she has such a great way to turn that and say, it's not all about the fortune of the people that you've met. It's about the dedication that you put into it. And
Wow.
then when people see the talent and the skill and just that energy, they want to invest. And I've learned that to then pass on to people that I've hired. So I
That's
remember hiring,
amazing.
yeah, one of the girls I hired, she was like, oh my gosh, somebody's got to take a chance on me. And I was like, I am so taking a chance on you, because
Oh, I love that.
you were me, 10, 15 years ago. And she's shining bright in the hotel industry still. So I love little
Wow.
stories like that where somebody just has to take a chance.
Yep. And you said something there too about energy. And I think when you're flowing with the positivity and you're in that space of being a positive, influential person, coming from your genuine self, then you exude this energy that people are just naturally attracted to. There's a magnetism there.
Mhm.
And people can read our energy, whether we can identify it as energy or whatnot. People can read that, and people will be attracted to the positive energy and less attracted to the negative energy, for sure.
It is so true. And you think by being in the hotel industry, you think people want to be in the hotel industry
Right?
and have great energy, right? But I mean, I've worked with a great handful of folks that you're just like, why are you in this industry? This is not for you.
Right.
It's just whether it's been
Wow.
salespeople on my team or just other directors or managers that I've worked with. And I just think, I don't know that you have the personality for this. And that's a lot of it, right? Is your personality that comes through. But there's definitely, if you're walking into bad energy or good energy in a day there. But yeah.
I
So
love
I'd
it.
say a lot of my positive influence has certainly been a handful of key people that I could point out.
All right. What about negative influences?
Oh, same. So I was thinking about that because okay, and I'm going to lead into a little bit more about weaknesses too, but I had a region. So he was a regional, and I had this regional that a lot of us always said, why does he feel like he motivates by intimidation?
Mm,
And it was just so like you felt like you were just working so hard and you're putting in so many hours and you're just trying to do all the right things, but then it was never good enough. Or
yeah, that's
once you
not fun.
finally like turned a corner, then you're just like, thank you, I think. And he was really, I think he was just because maybe he was the type of guy that just sees potential in people and then just pushes you, but that's not, I don't think, a positive influence or a motivator. And I'll tell you, there's one time, this goes back to the values, is there was a time, we had to report in weekly numbers and whatnot. So we'd always have to put in like how many prospecting calls the team made and whatnot. And we had a softer week one week, and he asked about it. And he said, did you want to go ahead and revise your numbers? And I said, no, we had a big group in house. We were obviously taking care of our guests and we were elsewhere. And that was okay. And he said, well, I gave you a chance to change your numbers. And I'm like, that
What?
is not me. Like, that is not ethical. Like, ethics is one of my
Hmm.
top values. You just have to stay true to yourself, and it's not ethical. It doesn't feel right. I said, I'm not going to lie my way to being successful. That is certainly not it. So I thought, my gosh, my regional's asking me that.
Right?
No, thank you. Yeah.
But
So
when you're young in your career, that's intimidating, right? Because you're like, "Oh my gosh, here's this regional person asking." And he definitely, in my opinion, was working off of fear, right? He was coming from a place of fear, not
Mhm.
from a place of his true genuine self. But, we get influenced by that because we think here's this regional guy and I've got to do what he says. So, kudos to you for not doing that, right?
Yeah, it takes a lot sometimes when you think, what's
Mhm.
the right thing? Is this going to jeopardize my career, or am I going to stay true to myself? And I'm the one who has to look at myself in the mirror the next day, right? So
Yes,
it's
exactly.
mhm. Yeah,
Oh
there's
my, so we have some really great people on, a lot of people that we know. Emily, Shanna, Rhonda, Essen, thank you guys for being here and for contributing to the conversation. So we appreciate that. Essen loved the espresso story. Front end employees are sales. Yeah, they are. Managers of first impressions, like Shanna said. And Emily,
Mhm.
so true. You learn a lot from both positive and negative experiences in people. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. So in my book, I tell stories of some positive influences and some negative influences, but I also uncover the 6 hidden secrets that I believe are the things that, there's a lot of things that we learn about leadership and about being influential, like good communication and confidence and those kinds of things. But these are secrets that I think that people don't, or things that people don't talk about. That's why we call them the hidden secrets, right?
Mhm.
And so tell me what your favorite hidden secret was.
Okay, so this was great. So as what's interesting about your book is when folks are reading this book and they're in leadership roles, it really helps you take a step back and identify like what you relate to, because
Mhm.
a lot of the information you had in here is super relevant to today, and it's really it's just relatable. So
Thank
here's
you.
what I love about the first one is number 2, which is know you, be you. And I think the reason why this resonates so much is because people can get so caught up in corporate ladder chasing,
Wow, yes.
right? And I'll be the first to admit when like I said, I was 26 as a DOS and I was on the career path. But at some point you say, okay, I'm good. Now I want to maximize and I want to actually focus where I'm at instead of just keep moving up. But I mean, you eventually do, but you're growing as a leader once you get to a certain
Yeah.
level. So I think what's interesting that ties into this is you're familiar with Strength Finders, right?
Yes.
Strength Finders. So I love that. And I love that our organization invested in all of us to go through that. And I
Amazing.
think once you identify your strengths, and this is what I'm going to tie into when we're talking about weaknesses a little bit. When you can identify your 5 top strengths, because that's where they focus on first,
Hmm.
it really allows you to like wrap yourself into that. So you're like, okay, my top 2 are maximize and arrange. Okay, that said a lot to me when I started looking at what I was doing with my team. But to be you and to know you and to stay true to you, that's just knowing what your strengths are and to dive into that. So I think to tie into a leadership part of that too is how many times when we do reviews with people do we say, here's what you're really good at, but here's where your need areas are. Why do we do that? And then the other part is when you're interviewing, what are you really good at? What are your strengths? And then we've moved on from saying, what are your weaknesses to what are your challenge areas?
Yeah, because we don't want to offend anybody with the word
Right, like, what are
weakness.
you weak at? No, what are your challenge areas? How about we actually focus on what people are good at and not what their challenge areas are, and they're gonna thrive. And once you
Yeah.
learn that, it just really settles back to your point of know you, be you. Focus on what you're good at, and it's going to make everything be well-rounded and circled in that. And I could go on with my team about that part of it, but
But
that
it's
was
true because, I think that for whatever reason, we and again, early I think in our career as we're younger and still finding our place, uh
mhm,
we just hone in on our weaknesses. And then I do this still sometimes
mhm,
where somebody will say something about a strength of mine and I'll do the but dot dot dot, right? And I'll
yeah,
turn it kind of into a weakness. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Stop doing that. And I think that we do ourselves such a disservice. Our weaknesses aren't, it's not a bad thing. It's just that those are the things where we should not be spending our time, like you're talking about. And the quicker we embrace them, I think in the book I talk about the weakness skid, uh, you know, steer into the weakness skid, because if you just
mhm,
embrace that we've got them, we've all got them, people can see them. Heather and some of these other people on here can see my weaknesses from, a mile away because they know me. And but we can see those weaknesses, and it's just, why are we spending so much time focusing on those? To your point,
mhm.
focus on those strengths. It's so much more powerful, and that's where we should be spending our time, in those strengths. So I love that.
I love, and as a leader, I just think it helped me grow too by doing that,
Yeah.
because when you can look at your team and say, okay, we have a project that we're working on, but I need somebody who's really analytical. I need somebody who's creative. I need somebody who can really multitask, whatever that is. When you know that about your team, you can easily put them into that position, and then they love it, because then they're like,
Mhm.
I'm doing something I love. I'm not tasked with something that I just hate to get up and do. They want to get up and actually
Yeah,
succeed in it. So why wouldn't we want to do that? So I love that one. That one was really, I think, the one that stuck out the most.
I
But I
love
had a
that.
second runner up too.
Okay, good. Let's talk about that.
They're all really good, but I was like, oh, these two are really relatable. So the second one is number 4, which is, I love the title of this, Kick the Yes Men to the Curb. And I thought, what does she mean by that? So when I read it, I was like, oh, yes. Stop surrounding yourself with people that are just going to say, yes, ma'am, or I agree, or great idea. Like, we need to be challenged, and you
Yes.
need people to do that. So, what I think too, in being a true leader, to add into this is, and you add this in your book, be vulnerable, and most importantly, be transparent,
Yeah.
because that's your human side coming out, and it's not just boss and staff, right? So,
Yes.
when you can kick the yes men to the curb and realize, and this goes back to when we're all learning as young leaders, we feel that we need to have the answer to everything because we're the boss. And I am a
Mhm.
firm believer. My first DOS job, I was like, why didn't I know that? Or I should have all the answers because
Yeah.
I'm in this position. And then you start realizing that it's okay not to have all the answers. You shouldn't have all the answers, because if you did, why would you need to be surrounded by other people that are going to challenge you,
Yeah.
right? So
Plus, you can't. Like, there's no way you can have all the answers.
absolutely. So it's like, once people have that
Mhm.
aha moment in their growth period to say, it's okay, they don't have all the answers. And that's actually the right thing. My current boss now, I mean, I've known her for years, but when she had said one, she said, when you surround yourself by good talent, that's what makes the team work, because everybody has something. She says, I don't know anything. She's so good in the sense that, this is where I say you learn from a good leader. You get
Yeah.
on the phone and she's talking to maybe another hotel, and she says, I have Heather here because she's the one who has all the answers. No,
Love
I
it.
mean, to make it look like she's not the smart one on the call, to give
Yeah.
credit to all of her other people, which is what good leaders do. They don't take credit for themselves. They
Mhm.
give credit to their team. But yeah, so I thought you did a great job on really saying that one out loud there. Just stop having people just say yes and agree with you. Be challenged. And you had a great story of yourselves. Like, I loved how you put your own personal stories to it. That's what was really fun to read too.
And you
If you're
probably knew some of them already. So,
I
uh,
did, and they
yeah.
were hilarious. And some of them I was like, oh, I wonder if she's going to say, and oh, yep, there she is. There's that story. She wants to go steal construction equipment somewhere along the way.
Well, I don't hold a whole lot back. But you know what? There is a story that I don't have in there. I was training, and there was maybe 6 of us doing a training certification, and we had to do. I can't even remember what it was, but some sort of an activity. And I was the leader of the activity, and the other 5 people were going through the activity. And the activity was basically I think what it was something about you had to take somebody through a maze, and there was a situation where they had their boss and they were having to lead them through something, and every single one of the people that were there, who were pretty successful leaders in their own right, when we were debriefing, and again, I can't remember the exact situation, but when we were debriefing, they were said, well, we didn't want to push that because we were dealing with our boss. So we weren't going to rock the boat. We were just going to let them make the call. And I'm like, oh, that's so painful to me, because they're just another human being who is maybe a little bit further ahead of you on the corporate ladder, right?
Mhm.
And they need that. And if you're working for somebody who doesn't appreciate that, eh, get out. Get
Yeah.
out.
It's so true. It's funny, and I bet my mom is listening right now too. But I remember my mom said to me when I was starting to um, work more into leadership roles, and she said, "It's always so interesting how you can go on sales calls and talk to either a CEO or an office manager or whatnot." And I was like, "They'll put their pants on one leg at a time." It's just like,
Yeah.
what's different? They just are in a different role, but it's just being true to you, back to that, and comfortable
Mhm.
with yourself to be able to have those conversations with people. But yeah, it's a lot of that fear that you mentioned too.
Yep.
That
And
people
it's ego. And ego is driven off of fear. And there's healthy ego, but there's toxic ego. And it's the toxic ego that we want to get rid of. And that's the one that keeps us in fear and the one that
Mhm.
holds us back. That fear and that toxic ego are eventually just going to hold us back,
Yes.
or make us miserable or stress us out. The other thing, too, and I don't even think I said this in the book, but when you are living in your true self and you're being who you are, like your stress levels are at a completely different vibration, right? Like now all of a sudden your stress levels are manageable because you can feel good about where you're at in your journey and the decisions that you're making and the risks that you're taking because they're genuine and they're based on who you are.
It's true. And actually, another piece of that. So, as we were developing our leadership class, it was interesting as we'd come across, different videos that we can play throughout just to show, break it up a little bit for our audience. But I think a key takeaway that I learned in that too is the difference between managing and leading. And we
Yes.
do a really great exercise on that with them to really say, and this is how we learn too, is we're teaching more, but it's like,
Right.
what's the difference between a manager and a leader? Managing is just managing a task, whereas leading is inspiring and influencing. And
Mhm.
that's who people want to follow. And that's kind of what I meant with my quote on your book is when you get to your vulnerable self, that's the true kind of leadership you want to be in because that's who people want to follow. And a
Yeah.
great question that was asked in this is if you were to leave your job, would people follow you?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a little gut wrenching too, because you're like, what if
Right?
the answer is no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you really got to look at what your leadership style is because if people won't follow you,
Yeah.
how influential really are you in that?
Interesting. And
Yeah.
Shanna says egotistic leader up against insecure followers equals a bad combo.
Oh, totally. That's
100%.
a good one. That's a
Yeah, that is a good one. And your mom is listening. Hi, Linda.
Hi, mom.
I love it. I love it. Um, so when you were reading the book, I mean, this is a weird question to ask you because I'm going to put you on the spot. Because you are a strong leader, influential leader. Was there something that you took away from the book that you said, "Oh, I need to pay more attention to that," or "I need to do more of that"?
Yeah. So what's interesting is a lot of what you were saying. It's nice when you're reading it and you go, "Oh my gosh, I totally agree." And you feel like you're
Yeah.
already doing a lot of that, and you realize the importance of it. But I think if we transition a little into COVID style,
Yeah.
a couple of your other secrets were screw expectations and conquer emotions. And I thought, I when I read the book, I was like, yes, it makes sense. But when you really take a step back and look at things that are out of your control, which as a leader can happen many times,
Yeah.
I thought the screw expectations was good because I'm a very structured person. So
Uh,
I like to take risks and really think about what the next venture can be. And as an example, I started this team, 11 years ago, and I was a team of one. I was a sole woman doing it all. And then I
yeah.
grew the team, and that can get into COVID conversation too. But
Well, how many people was it pre-COVID?
34.
I mean, that's amazing, Heather, to go from you to building it to 34. That is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, we were at a team of 11 for a while, which was nice to be able to grow. It's like
Yeah.
year over year, you grow a little bit, and then all of a sudden, gangbusters. 2019, we were adding, and we got up to 34. And then
Wow.
when COVID hit, we call ourselves the COVID six.
Oh. Well, six better than one.
Well, and now we're up to 15.
Yay.
So we've slowly been able to bring people back, which is exciting and
Yeah.
fun, and it's amazing. But yeah, to go from 34 to 6, talk about having to shift as a leader in your mindset. So
Yeah. Talk about maybe also a potential blow to the ego. Not that you had anything to do with it, but when you're again, moving up the ladder, and you're like, oh, I've got this team of 34, and you're like, oh, now all of a sudden I have this team of 6, and it's a whole different feel.
Yeah. I took it, it wasn't too much of a blow to the ego. I took it really hard at first because there was really no warning. Like our company, to give credit to our company, they really waited to the last possible time that they'd have to cut ties. So we cut ties with 2/3 of the company. It's just that my team was one of the most affected. But I will say what that did, and this is where I think being in tune as a leader is take the time to, scream in the pillow kind of thing. Because I mean, when I got the call and I was like, wait, that's who's left. I mean, oh my God, I have to go lay off 29 people and do it by 3 p.m. Are you shitting me right now? Like,
Yeah.
just, you don't expect that call. So you do what you need to do as a leader to get that emotion out and, conquer those emotions so that you can then be the leader you need to be to have those conversations with the people that you say, okay, you're here and it's a pay cut, but now we have to go lay off 29 people and some of you are people leaders. So you have to do that with me. And, and think about, okay, so I'm kind of across the board on this part too, but when you're talking about leaders and that you're a leader, but part of being a leader is developing your team to be leaders.
Be leaders, yes.
Right. And you talk about that in your book too, that it's not just about us, it's how are you influencing people so that you're rising them up for the next stage. So as you're moving up, other people are moving up. And we were at the stage where I was developing great leaders on my team, and they still are, but they lost their people. So it's just like you get to this point where you're diversifying and you're redeploying in a way. And then you have to, take a step back. And my favorite word of 2020 is pivot. Hello, Friends fans. So,
right.
How many times did we have to pivot in 2020? But we just constantly had to keep pivoting. But it was more of take a step back and look at what's important and maybe re-engineer a few things too. Maybe we were doing things that were just not necessary. So there was some times that we could say, let's take less steps to get somewhere. Maybe we don't need all those reports. But what was very humbling, I was now at the front line with my team, and it brings you back to that. And back to the vulnerable state too, is my team knew there were certain days they carried me, and that was okay.
Yeah.
Like you can't be that powerhouse every day. There's going to be emotions, but when you have that vulnerability and transparency with your team, and then somehow they just rise up. Like I remember one of my team members, he's like, that's okay. We got you today. And I was like,
love that. Oh,
because he's like, it's our turn. Like you need a day. And it was.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think, when I started my career and the whole corporate world was very hierarchical, right? Like you've got the person up here and us little minions down here don't ever get exposure to that person. And it's, I don't think.
Oh, true.
Yeah. And I don't think that's the case as much anymore. I think that people are craving that authentic connection with everybody at all levels of the organization. And I think a leader can't just sit in their glass house and get and expect that people are going to be on board to keep following them and looking to them for that influence. Right. It's interesting too. We were talking about the emotion. There's a guy by the name of Todd Herman. He's a entrepreneurial guru in the entrepreneurial space, very well known, but he's also a coach to very big people, executives, sports people. And he got COVID really early on, lives in New York City, got COVID really early on, and he's a pretty high achiever. So he did not, he was bored. So he's like, what am I going to do? I'm locked in my house. I have COVID. I can't go anywhere. And he started calling people that he knows. So again, we're talking high level CEOs, and people that are running big businesses. And he talked to people at all different size companies, but they were always the CEO or the leader. And what was interesting is that he did this little analysis of the companies that were not struggling, and their CEOs tended to have a more positive outlook. They used certain words less. They didn't focus on COVID. They were like, we're pivoting, we're making some adjustments. And it was such an amazing analysis that he gave. And I remember thinking at the time, this is what the true leaders, true positive influential leaders are doing is, hey, how are we going to right the ship so that we can get people back on board quicker, that we can get revenue's coming in quicker, and those are the ones that have done well versus the ones that were stressed about it and freaking out about it and weighing heavy with everything that was going on.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's an interesting story to hear that.
Mhm.
But I do think when people get bogged down with the negativity and like, what do we do? How do we get out of this? I mean, there's just you can get sucked in with that. It back to the energy. But
Yeah.
when you have that mindset shift, it's really about the mindset shift. You just got to think, well, what we did today and yesterday no longer exists. So
No longer exists.
what's
And
next?
yeah, and everybody was flying blind. I mean, nobody could have predicted this. Nobody could have predicted a pandemic. Everybody was flying blind, but I think what was cool about it is you could see the ones that were like, "All right, well, let me pull my bootstraps up and let's keep
Mhm.
going." And if you're positioned well in that ability to manage your emotions, I'm not saying you're not going to have emotions. I'm saying to figure out when and where they're appropriate, and the ones that have that positive outlook and are coming from a place of authenticity, again, keep using that word,
That's so
that
true, though.
there's so many better places to go with it than just sitting in front of, we let news influence us, right? If you're sitting in
Yeah.
front of the TV watching news 24/7, you're probably going to start getting some negative vibes because that's what they focus on more than anything. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that's hugely important.
Yeah, it's true because you're right. If you just sit there and it takes over you, but if you can embrace it, like I remember we've had conversations of, oh, it was so fun to see what restaurants were doing with,
Yes,
not just
creativity.
the creativity, and
Yes.
it's kind of fun. I mean, as much as we could all say 2020 was, in the crapper, but at the same time, there was a lot of positive that came out of it because it's the way people approached it. And it's the way
Yes.
they said, if I can't do it this way, then how do I do it to survive? And just pivot in their creative way of doing something. And, a lot of us won't do business the way we used to. And we say that with our
Mhm.
hotels, business will come back.
But it's not
It's
gonna be
just
the
going to
same.
come back in a different way. And we're going to be operating in a different way. I mean, this has definitely changed our world.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's okay because you know what? Sometimes change is good, and I'm
Mhm.
I'm one of those believers. I like change
I do too. I
because
love
it keeps
change.
it fresh, right? Like
Yeah.
I've had team members on my team where it's like, "Oh, please just," and they're like, "Oh, change is coming," and it's like it's not doomsday. Like it's it's actually okay because
Yeah.
change makes us grow and learn and just continue to do things maybe differently, or you just tweak it. But yeah, I like change because I think it just mixes and freshens things up a little bit.
Yeah, I do too. So what do you think what's something that you have had to change as a leader because of the pandemic that is just forever change that you'll continue to do going into, when we get back to normal, whatever that looks like?
Oh my god, we're totally in the world of Zoom. I mean, we traveled so much. This isn't
All
what's gonna
right.
stay forever. I know we'll get back, but it's so interesting that for me, I traveled 50% of the time. I had people on my team that traveled every week, so that was an adjustment when all
Wow.
I do is this. But I think, truly how we're going to change is we're still going to support our hotels and work with our hotels in the same manner that we did. But what's interesting is that we've really had to find immediate needs. So, we always say strategic approaches or long-term business or what can we help you with to identify business today. But now we're learning because none of us have been through this before is how do we support you? And we're always trying to stay, 2 to 3 steps ahead of our hotels to identify opportunities to bring to them. And I think
Yeah.
for us, we're going to be looking at things a little differently because of the way that I feel like we just always have to have a step for 1 foot further in front, something like that. But it,
Yeah.
you can't prepare for this. Do you know what I mean? Like I felt like, as I said to you off the cuff, it's like the rug just got pulled from right under you. Like
Mhm.
nobody expected any of this. But I think what we've learned is as a team, and what's great about it from my peers to my direct reports to my, other departments that we work with, we were all able to take a step back and become a little bit more human and
I love
understand.
that so much.
Mhm. It was very emotional when we finally said, like we're getting to know people. Like as we're zooming in, people would go, It's okay that I'm sitting here in my office with, this. I remember this one guy. He's like, I'm sorry, I have my two cats behind me. And he's like, my hair is getting a little flowy, but this is me.
Yeah.
And he even said, he was like, I would never appear like this in the office. But I think once we start getting back to a little bit of sense of normalcy, I think we're all going to have a sense of compassion that
Yeah.
wasn't there before. And I think a little sense of like relaxation in a way. Like I feel like we're going
Yeah.
to go into business in a relaxed mode and not be so stuffy. At
I
least that,
totally agree because I also think that there's this air of anything can happen at like overnight, shit can change, right?
Mhm.
Overnight.
Overnight.
And I think you're right. I think there's going to be kind of an element of the relaxation and that vulnerability and the authenticity and all of that that's there. And then also, I think for solid leaders, they're going to be keeping their eye out on just I don't know if troubleshooting is the right word, but anticipating
Yeah.
what if, not in a fear-based way, but just in a looking forward sort of way that, we need to be able to pivot quickly and that flex, the more flexible we are, the more successful we can be when we have to go through something like this.
Totally. And I think flexible is key. Like I just think
Mhm.
agile, nimble,
Yeah.
flexible, all those key words is when you're a leader and you can do that and you can change in a second and just switch gears, that's what helps us be successful because the ones who just stay so pigeonholed and not be able to look at what can be done and approach it that way in a positive way, they're only holding themselves back and then they're holding their team back. And
Yep.
it's again like I just think the most successful leaders are the ones that really are authentic and just have that transparency and vulnerability because I know and I'll be vulnerable with it. I tell my team I'm like it's very humbling when you can get to that point and that you're just part of the team, and I always have said to my team I'm like
Yeah.
I'm just the director because somebody has to make the hard decisions, but at the
Right.
end of the day we're one team and we're
And
all we're all
we need
again,
all of
the
us.
same goal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we need all of us to make it work. I'm a small team now. After leaving corporate America and starting my own business, right? My team is small, but it used to be just me, and then I brought on Sherry, and then we brought on Julie, and we've got other contractors who are really integral to our business. But it's weird to do this now in a different environment, right? In corporate America, it was one thing, moved up that ladder and had people reporting to me. Now I'm like, oh, now it's my baby. Right now it's my business, it's my baby, and it's weird. I still say, from a vulnerable perspective, I still sometimes feel weird if I don't know something because it's my business. I feel like that little thought still creeps in for me, and I have to check myself and remind myself that, like, hey, Lisa, you don't have to do all this now. This is what you have people for, and we
Mhm.
are a team, and we're small but mighty, and we're doing a lot of great things, and I feel really lucky that I got the team that I have. But it still plays tricks, after all these years and all the things that I've learned. I still have to remind myself of my six secrets, hidden secrets, right?
Right. But I bet, because you're right, you get caught up in the day to day. But you did mention a quote, so I will say this part here because
Okay.
that actually what you just said is true for you too. Because you said the more visible you are, the greater the responsibility for positive influence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true because, you know, for you to have your own company like that, you're more visible because you're
Yeah.
out there and you're building your brand, you're building your team. And the same went for me when I was at property level. It's one thing, but when I got to a corporate
Yes.
position, then all of a sudden, people would come up to me because they know who I am, and there's 4,000 people there, and I'm like, hi,
Like, I don't know you, but I love that you know me.
hi. They're like, Heather, I
Yeah.
saw you on a training, and you're like, oh my gosh. So it's just when I read that, I thought it's so true because the more visible you are, the more responsibility you carry, and you can
Yep.
truly make a really nice positive difference in people's lives if you own it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
love that. Heather, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much
I
for
love
joining
it.
me and for being a supporter of the book and being a testimonial for the back of the book. Y'all have to get the book, and on the back, Heather's here. I see this is you right here.
I'm
Yeah.
so honored you asked me to be a part of it. It was such a great read. And truly, for anybody who's looking for it, it's an easy read. It's super
Mhm.
relevant, great tips and tricks. And obviously, we have some similar tastes because I'm totally digging your blue chair and my blue walls.
Oh my gosh. This would be a great, although it might blend in too much, but yes, I
Yeah.
agree. And
Like we're
it's
the opposite with my white chair and your white bookcase. And, yeah,
I was thinking that I didn't match well enough because I was doing this teal on a blue chair with a blue book, but
it
I'm
works.
all over the place with color. So, any final thoughts, Heather?
No, just I'm so happy for you and I'm so proud of you. And I'm just so happy to be on this journey with you to be able to share. And it's been really fun because I truly believe in the people around you that can make such an impact on your leadership role. And if you surround yourself with the right people and keep yourself to your true, authentic self and get yourself to that vulnerable state, people appreciate and trust you more. That's a big thing too. When you're vulnerable and transparent, that trust level goes to a whole different level.
Yeah, and speaking of vulnerable and transparent, I just have to say that Heather has known me for a while and was with me when my business was in the shitter, for lack of a better word, and she saw me when I was struggling, and I couldn't go do all the fun things that our group of friends would go do, and I couldn't travel, and it was a really hard time for me, and she was there for that. So I'm sure for you, Heather, it was interesting to read the book because you've seen my whole journey from corporate into business ownership into dipping down into the pit of despair and then coming back out the other side. So
It's really fun to see where you are now, but you're so humble from where you came from. And that's another key part.
thank you. I appreciate that. All right,
Cheers
everybody,
to
thank
you,
you guys
girl.
so much for being here. Cheers to everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you
joining
to
us.
everybody that helped me get to number one because we hit number one. I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it again because it's so exciting. We hit number one new release in a couple of different categories. So very exciting. I couldn't have done that without community and people supporting. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Heather, thank you for being here. And what a great discussion and really, really rich insight from you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime. Happy to do it again.
Yay. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great
Bye,
night.
everyone. Happy Monday.